Brother, thank you so much. I just finished hearing or listening to you, and we're just talking literally right before we hit play or record, a very motivating podcast. But before we get into you and all that good stuff and the podcast a little bit that I really enjoyed listening to, tell people who you are. Who do I have in front of me?
I'm just a simple guy. I'm your friend, Tony.
So tell them, what do you do?
Yeah.
Tell them what is it that you do?
What do I do?
Yeah.
I live moment by moment. I do a lot.
Yeah.
There is a lot there. But professionally, I sell real estate for Century 21. I have a passion for coaching and mentoring and helping young entrepreneurs and really inspiring others, motivating youth. I have a passion for ministry.
Yeah.
And sharpening other men, sharpening, our youth is a passion that I have. And above all else, I'm a husband and a father of 3.
I love that. So let's start from the beginning. Where are you from? Are you local? Let's kind of, so the point of my podcast, if you want to call it, is just to get to know the person in front of me. And maybe your story might touch somebody else, or maybe your story might help somebody else in a way, right? Whether it's business, personal, financial, whatever. That's my goal is just to have you share your story, and I ask you questions throughout this episode. So,
sounds like fun.
Yeah. Where does Tony come from?
Tony comes from, my name is Antonio Luis Medina Almodovar Jr.
Oh my goodness gracious.
My friends call me Tony.
My people call me Tony.
Yeah, keep it simple. I was born in New Jersey, Perth Amboy. Both my parents come from Puerto Rico.
Hey.
So I'm a first generation. They moved here from Puerto Rico. I was born in Jersey. And my dad moved to Vegas when I was a small boy. He's been doing mortgages all my life. And my mom, when my dad moved to Las Vegas, she moved us to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Oh my
Christmas
God.
City. So, a little small town, Lehigh Valley, in the middle of Pennsylvania. And I was raised there.
Yeah.
And I started off, I did a lot of jobs growing up. I started off as a cart pusher at a place called BJ's, just like Costco. I worked in a medical warehouse. I installed alarm systems, security systems for ADT. And then I was a young teenager and I liked to have fun and I had a lot of friends. So I got into bartending and I had a passion for bartending, and eventually that led me to become the bar manager at a fine dining restaurant in Allentown, Pennsylvania called Sangria. And we used to make sangrias on tap and have lots of fun. And then my dad said, how would you like to come meet the #1 Latino agent in the United States and, potentially sell real estate in Las Vegas? I bought my first house when I was 19. And I didn't know anything about real estate. I mean, that whole process was very confusing. But I said, why not? So I went down to Washington, D.C. We took a road trip, and I met him where he was being inaugurated as the national president of NAREP. And from the moment I met him, he inspired me, and he made it all about me. He was very humble. And during his inauguration speech, he was talking about his wife, his daughter, his dad, and he called me out on stage in front of like thousands of people. And something just sparked in me and motivated me, inspired me to book a one-way ticket. So I leased out my house. I bought a one-way ticket to Las Vegas, and the rest is history.
Wow. So let's unpack that a little bit. Your dad asked, hey, do you want to become a real estate agent? Or do you want to meet one of the biggest or the most successful real estate agents in our town or in the country? And so you say, sure, why not? And literally his speech is essentially what brought you to Vegas.
Yeah.
Or him like touching you and him just being genuine with you is what touched you.
Yeah.
So, okay, walk me through give me your first 90 days as a realtor. how was that transition? How was getting licensed and then the 90 days?
So when you get licensed, I mean, it's night and day. I started taking the classes online, and I'm more of an in-person, learner. So I started taking the classes right away. I had already gotten my feet wet online, and what they teach you in real estate school is just what to keep you out of jail. It has nothing to do with what you're actually going to be doing. And first day walking into the office, Juan Martinez slides me one piece of paper and says, "This is all I want you to focus on." I'm like, "Well, what about this and this chapter and law and contracts and the multiple listing services?"
Yeah.
He's like, "I don't want you to worry about any of that stuff. Here's one piece of paper. It was a just sold script. This is all you're gonna do. You're gonna make this phone call the entire time, and it's totally up to you how successful you're gonna be. But if you're willing to put in the work, it's what he said on stage, is if you're willing to put in the work and work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week, I promise I'll make you a millionaire." I'm like, okay, this guy made these big promises, and I fly across the country, and you give me one sheet of paper, but he was keeping it simple.
Yeah.
So the first 90 days, it was going to class to get my license and then making these phone calls. "Hi, we just listed a home. We know when one home sells, usually sells two more, sell right away. When do you plan on moving?" And I was making 50 to 100 contacts on a double dialer, like 2 headsets, a giant stack of white pages and phone numbers, and just like playing the piano. Dang. Like that's all I did. And by the time I got my license, I had 3 referral checks waiting, so it worked. And I remember, so my dad was recently going through a divorce, and he moved to Panorama Towers, high rise on the Strip.
Yeah.
So you got 2 young bachelors living in this high rise on the Strip, and they had this conference room in the towers where you could just reserve it and go sit down with this long conference table. And I was trained from the beginning on the 3x5 card method. So if I get a lead or if I speak with somebody and have a good conversation, their name and information went on a 3x5 card.
Okay.
And within the first 90 days, I remember it was like month 2, I would go into the conference room and lay out all my 3x5 cards, and they just ran across the entire desk.
That's awesome.
I did not understand what a lead was. If you gave me the time of day and were willing to talk to me, your name and number went on that 3x5
You were my
card.
people.
So I had to learn what leads meant and to discern the difference between them. But it was just taking massive action right from the beginning. So that's how the first 90 days started.
I was listening to a little bit of your podcast today, and I like that he said, Juan said, simplify the process. And that's what he did for you, right?
Yeah.
Make these calls, and then everything else will follow. Because I feel like that's the most difficult part, is to, 1, make calls because of the call reluctance, right?
Yeah.
And then 2, that's getting the leads. That's earning the business. That's bringing in the business. And that's the hardest part of our business, is bringing it in. Right? Because there's so many of us, so many loan officers, so many great realtors. How are you going to, I don't want to say convince, but for lack of a better word, how are you going to convince somebody to trust you with hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even millions of dollars, right? And so he simplified it for you. Make these calls.
Yeah.
So if somebody is a new realtor listening to this, what's one advice that you would give them right now?
It's hard. It's really hard to pick just one. That is something I wrestle with, because it is a giant elephant, but how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So if I look back to how I started and to keep it simple, it was that one script, that one source of lead generation. But then he gave me a second piece of paper, and on that second piece of paper, he had a notepad, and he just started writing on the notepad. And it was very simple. He said, "This is all I want you to focus on. You're going to practice, you're going to prospect, you're going to present, and you're going to preview properties. And when you're not presenting, you're prospecting." And I didn't have anybody to present to, so I was prospecting all day long. But it was very simple. It was from 8 to 6, 7 o'clock at night, and it was very simple. So I have a passion for newer agents, just because over the years, I love people, and I've seen so many, 80% don't make it past the first year, 90% past the second year. I've seen so many people with so much potential come and they just, for whatever reason, they don't make it. So one of the pieces of advice that I like to give to newer agents is just understanding that in the beginning, you make up what you lack in skill with your numbers. In the beginning, I had to put in a lot of numbers. I had to make a lot of contacts to get those transactions. Now I don't have to do as many because I have more skills. I've practiced, I've put in the time, I know the objections, I understand my numbers with the market. I mean, scenarios, I have experience that I don't necessarily have to have as much, put in as much work to generate a lead. In the beginning, you don't know how to, it's not about convincing something. My job is not to convince people, it's to guide people to accomplish the goals that they've set for themselves. But in the beginning, when you have nothing, it's like you're just trying to convince them to sign a contract. It's like, you're just, come on, I need this. Eventually you get to a place of abundance where, you can operate out of, and I don't need anybody to sign a contract. I'm looking for people that I can help, and I know how to help people. So in the beginning, I think it's just understanding to stick to a schedule. When we look at the 21 points of the Mike Ferry sales system, point number 1 is time management. So managing your time, protecting your mind, continuing to grow, and really finding a mentor, finding someone. That's what Juan gave me that completely changed my life. Having someone that can pour into you and help guide you along the process, I think that's huge. I've seen that is a key component from a lot of people who become extremely successful to those who just kind of dibble dabble in it.
Yep. So would you say then, hey, don't be a solo agent for your first 6 months to a year, whatever that time frame looks like, but join a team. And when I say a team because of the leader, right, of that team. He should be coaching you. He should be training you. So would you suggest a new agent, hey, join a team so that you can learn the business, learn how to bring in business so that you can become successful? Would you suggest that, or are you pro, against, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just really depends on the person. Being a member of a team has certain benefits, and it also has certain cons. It really depends on what you want your career in the industry to look like. Having a good leader, joining a team with somebody who's actually going to teach you to go out and hunt is not what a lot of teams do.
Yeah.
A lot of teams will, they just feed you. They don't teach you how to go out and hunt for your food. And I think that's one of the biggest differences when you're discerning whether or not to join a team or join a brokerage. If you're going to be a solo agent, just make sure that you have a broker or a trainer or a coach that is going to teach you. And if you don't, like if you're listening to this and you're in some remote location somewhere with I don't know.
No Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi. You can always join a coaching organization. Like Juan started with the Mike Ferry organization, and that was his coach. It wasn't necessarily the broker owner of the company he joined.
Wow, okay.
So there's some options when it comes to that, but definitely find someone that's going to influence you to continue to get up, grow your mind, put in the work, and just protect your mindset and understand that it doesn't happen overnight, but you get what you put into it.
Great advice. So now let's kind of pivot a little bit, because I want to touch on one thing that you just said right now, where you work 10, 12, 16-hour days sometimes. And so I've been hearing this more as I get older, where there is no real work-life balance, but it's more like you choose your time more wisely. When you're with your kids, you're more intentional about being with your kids. When you're with your wife, the same thing. So do you agree with that? Disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Time blocking is a skill that I'm constantly refining. I'm constantly focused on. And it's not perfect. There's never going to be a perfect one way or not to do it. But you learn from your mistakes. You get better and better. And that's the whole goal, is to continue to improve how you manage your time. Becoming a good steward of your time is extremely essential along the journey to success. So, and like Juan was saying in our podcast earlier, when you have an extremely strong drive in one area, you have an imbalance in the rest. So if I'm I could be making $1 million a year, but my family life is extremely important to me. Being at home with my kids at 6, 7 o'clock at night, when, I have a newborn, a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, like those years, I'm not going to get back, and I'm not willing to sacrifice that for business when I have enough. So eventually I'll be, when I started, I didn't have a family, so I could be at the office till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So I think it's a little bit differently for everyone. But when you sit down to plan out your life and create the vision of what you want your life to look like, we have to prioritize what is most important. So for me, putting God comes first. My Bible time, my quiet time, my men's retreats, my community groups, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the men in my business, without my coaches and my mentors, but in my spiritual life, without the men that have helped refine me and clarify what is most important. Because I got really lost in work, and this is really important. And for me, that I was spiritually dry. I was going through a drought. So I had to understand which one was most important to me.
Yep.
And there's a certain discernment and wisdom that comes behind that, and understanding when I look at my calendar, my important family moments comes first. God comes first, then my family, then my physical and mental health, and work comes last, but it needs to be blocked out.
Yeah.
I need to protect it, because if not, the distractions and the noise of the world, sand's going to get thrown in our face. Our phone's going to be bombarded with spam calls and appraisers and inspectors. And there's
Yes.
Mike Ferry taught me anything in real estate can wait till after 12 o'clock. And I've come to learn, if you put the right systems in place, that is true.
I do 100% agree with that. And I hadn't heard it until, say, a couple of weeks ago. My coach was like, the first part of your day should be the money-making part, and not putting out fires, but working in your business, not on your business. So I 100% agree with that. Now, would you say that, because Juan, I think, touched on 5 pillars, or was it 4 pillars? 5, right?
5 equities, 5
Yeah,
pillars.
5, yes. So would you say you need to have an equal balance in all of them at all times, or maybe some might deviate a little bit or come down a little bit in importance, or how do you manage that, and what are your thoughts on that?
So one is understanding that those exist, so you ought to study them. So Brian Tracy, he's the author that he has a book behind that, and it's a really good book. I'm a very auditory person, so I like to listen to those. And what he explains is, you're always going to have an imbalance when you're extremely high in one area. But what we ought to have, and like you heard Juan say, there's minimum standards in each. So creating a balance across the board is near impossible. Like,
Okay,
if
good,
you're going to go off,
Thank you.
there's no balance. If you're going to have a multi-billion-dollar, corporation, chances are your spiritual life, or your family, or your physical health, or your mental health, one of those is, odds are it's going to suffer. So what we need to do is say, okay, what are my minimum standards? Like you heard Juan say, he's got to go to church at least once a week, and that's his minimum standard for his spiritual life. For my marriage, I need to go on at least one date night a week. For my kids, I need to date them individually at least one night a week. We call it parent time. So 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. Those are my minimum standards for those areas. At work, my minimum standard is 25 contacts a day. So in each area, there's always going to be an imbalance, especially if you go through a loss, then you got to focus more over here. You have a newborn baby, so work starts to take a hit. There's seasons where one area is significantly off than the other. but it is kind of like playing this, it's like you got to keep it up over here, and then you got to come over here, and you got to keep it up. And every day you just kind of got to make sure that you're dividing your attention in the correct manner. But that's where time management is key, so that way you understand, I got to put my minimum standards inside, because if not, if you don't plan, what's the saying go? If you fail to plan, you fail.
Yeah.
If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yes, yes. So, man, so many good nuggets there. Now, what are so the 5 pillars or the 5 equities are? Name them. What are they?
Spiritual, finances, family, mental, and physical.
Okay. Okay. So, guys, you're not always gonna be equally what do we call it, yoked on all 5. So, give yourself some grace. Now, I want to touch on your spouse. You said she's amazing. I've met her. She is very, very kind, very genuine. How is it working? Because I also work with my wife. My wife is on my team, and we're a team. How do you guys separate love, kindness, like affection, business? How's that structure in your family?
So, great question. There's definitely a lot of work. Having a marriage that thrives and continues to grow is a lot of work, but it is extremely worth it. I went through a divorce when I was young, and I've seen the effects that has on your children and on your legacy and just kind of on your overall mindset. It is much harder to get divorced than it is to actually put in the work to be a good husband. So number one is, I got to take care of me so she can take care of her. I need to make sure that I'm working on my mindset and my physical, my spiritual, so that I got to pour into my cup so that then I can pour into her. If I'm not taking care of myself and I'm not focused on making sure that I'm good, I can't take, it's kind of like when you get on the plane, you put on your mask first before you go put it on them. So that's one. 2, studying marriage it's just been extremely valuable along our marriage journey. Studying what it means to be a good spouse, what it means to be a good parent, and then surrounding ourselves with wise counsel, people that we give permission to speak into our marriage. Because a lot of times it's like, and there's this really great book called Love and Respect, and it talks about this crazy cycle. I'm sure you've been there, where it's like, she disrespects you, so you don't cherish her, and then because you're not cherishing her, she disrespects you. Yeah. And it talks about this crazy cycle. And a lot of times, I mean, I'm sure most husbands can attest, I have no idea what I did to make her feel like I wasn't cherishing her. And same vice versa. She doesn't really understand how I was disrespected and the wounds that I carry. So studying your spouse, understanding what her wounds are, what my wounds are, creating boundaries. Hey, we don't, in my house, we don't say the word divorce. That's just, we can get into an argument, we don't say that word. Having timeouts is extremely important. There was a study that was done by a university where they would have couples come in and then interject these heated argument topics, and they would study how they would fight. And what they noticed was, if they took a pause, they said, hey, we gotta work on the camera, just hold on, don't do anything. What happens is your emotions become regulated, and if your emotions are heightened, they found that conflict was resolved less than 2% of the time.
Okay.
So understanding that we call it HALT. Hungry, and angry, lonely, or tired. If I'm 2 out of the 4, we got to pause. We cannot sit here and just have this argument. Taking a break is extremely important. So we've learned the date nights are extremely important, making sure that we model that for our children. We model how to resolve conflict. We had to study how to fight. Like, what are our boundaries in fighting with each other when we have disagreements? Yes. What can I do? What can I do? Like, I've had to learn and it's different for everyone.
Yes.
So those are just some of the things But working with her is an extreme blessing because, it gives us more to talk about. It helps us understand each other better. We speak a language that most other people don't speak, and we can push each other and pull each other and drive each other forward. So
Yeah. I'm right there. She's the better half of the business. She's the brains, and the beauty. I don't even know. I don't even know what I am. So, but I 100% agree with you. Let's kind of shift now into what you're trying to do this year for production. What are your goals, and how are you going about achieving those goals?
yeah, so good question. So we're on a journey to get to 100 transactions. We've hit the 50 mark. Now our journey is to help 200 families, because if we help 200 families, in essence, that's 100 closed transactions for us. There's usually one on each side. So if we're looking just inside of the business, that's the journey. The goal for this year is 60, which we're on track for. The way we do that is we got to get up in the morning and have conversations with people that we know and that we don't know, and make sure that we're servicing our customers and providing the best service that we possibly can, so that way in turn they're going to want to refer us to other people, and that's a byproduct thereof. Making sure that our systems within the office are how we service our customers, how we service our past customers, making sure that we're still providing value after the transaction is all part of longevity. But, those goals, when it comes to work, those are not at the top of the list when it comes to goals, right? That's just when it comes to work. Personally, our goals is to make sure that we're continuing to work on our marriage, and we work through some of the disagreements and the things that we're starting to notice. So we've gone through a season of what are our triggers. So this season, our goal is to define what each other's triggers are. Having a minimum number of dates and getaways. Making sure that for our kids, we have a goal of how many dates we're going to take them on, what our vacation's going to look like. When it comes to our finances, we have, these debts need to be paid off. Our house needs to be at this certain percentage. So we have many goals across the board. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. Do you guys now for do you guys do like, hey, here it's November, it's October, let's start planning for next year already, right? And so I've seen Felicia Rexford, shout out to you. She does like a whole weekend getaway with her husband, or a day. I don't remember exactly, but they spend the entire time together mapping out what the next year looks like, whether it's buy more investment properties, go more vacations, buy a new car, whatever it is, right? They spend that whole weekend mapping out the following year. And how important do you think that is for the success of the family?
Oh yeah, it's crucial. As the head of the household, especially as the husband, I'm a believer that it is my responsibility to lead my family spiritually and physically and mentally. That's my job as the father, which a lot of times is extremely daunting. Many of us take that for granted, but doing things like that, because she's my partner in that. So she's the one that these decisions need to be run by, and God created us to become one. So it's my responsibility to make sure it happens with her. So yeah, we look at next year, and Juan taught me all about brain dumping. So we get a legal pad, and we just write it all out, and we just do a brain dump, and we start to envision, what if we did this, or what if we did that? What if we did this? And what we often find is, number one, we disagree on a lot of things, which tends to make it challenging. But that's where counsel comes into play. Yeah. Counsel, having someone else say, that we go before and say, hey, look, I have these ideas, I have these aspirations, what do we do? And a lot of times that's where it usually goes back to, have you prayed about it together? Yeah. Because I have what I want to do, she has what she wants to do, and then he has what he wants us to do. Yes. So that he's usually the barometer, the standard of measurement for what we do decide to move forward or to step into. And sometimes we want these things, we want this new car, we want this vacation, we want this, but he's like, nope, I'm closing that door. You guys, here's another door. We're very blessed because in the beginning, what we learned was if we put God in the middle, and if I grow closer to him and she grows closer to him, we grow closer to each other. So a lot of times, and this is part of my recovery journey, I was addicted to alcohol for a long time, and I had to go through this journey of understanding what this symptom of alcoholism, where does it come from?
Yeah.
And it really came from a place of wanting to take the world by my own will and not surrendering to a higher power's will. And when we have these disagreements, where a lot of people and where we used to get to where we'd just we'd freeze is because I want this, you want that, and they both look so good to ourselves, right? But being able to surrender what I want and really just bringing myself to my knees, humbling myself and saying, it's not about what I want. It's about what God wants for me and to do through me has been what helps discern and guide our decisions. And let me tell you, there's nothing, in my opinion, more powerful than taking that posture as a husband and saying, look, I don't want to be selfish. I want you to have everything you want. But let's give this, what I want and what you want, let's give it to God and see what he wants us to do. And I'm a believer that if I'm leading my wife spiritually, she's going to have these conversations with Christ. I'm going to have these conversations with Christ, and he's not going to send us mixed messages. He's not going to tell her to do one thing and me to do another. No, he's going to lead us in the same direction.
100%.
So having that be the judge in the midst of our marriage and what God tends to do, he tends to work through people. So having wise counsel, men that are inclined spiritually to open themselves up to allow the Holy Spirit to speak through them and into our marriage it's just been extremely invaluable.
That's beautiful, man. That just kind of gave me the chills. All right. I try to keep our podcast to drive time. So we're at 20, 30 minutes.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
That was fast.
Yeah. So how can people reach you if they want to ask you questions about how can I, whatever, your marriage, how can, help or real estate, where can people reach you? Where can they DM you? Where can they email you if you want to put that information out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an open book. I believe God's blessed me to be a blessing to others. I can't tell you how many times I'll be in the middle of doing something at work, or I have this plan for my day, and somebody just comes out and it's like I feel the tap on my shoulder and it's like, hey, I want you to talk to this person, but I gotta do this. Hey, you said you would do what I asked you to do. So yeah, you can DM me, Tony Medina Jr., on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, 702-686-9595, Tony Jr. 642 @gmail.com. And if you want to send me a carrier pigeon to Century 21, you can do that too.
Brother, thank you so much. I appreciate you
man. Thank
opening
you.
up and sharing, a little bit about yourself. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome.